Okay, so today I have here with me Mark Goodman of Reno, Nevada, and he is a business attorney that practices law in both Nevada and California. He received his undergrad from UC Berkeley, and he got his law degree from the University of San Francisco, and he started Goodman Law Center in 2007. So, Mark, how are you doing today?
It's a thrill to be here, Wesley. Like I was telling you before went on air, I love doing these kinds of things and just kind of sharing my knowledge and sharing my experience with people. And, I hope that your listeners find it helpful.
Yes, sir, for sure. And we're definitely excited to have you here. It's a privilege. And just to kind of jump straight into it. So if you could let the listeners know a little bit more about what you do and what exactly a business attorney does.
Well, there's several different types of, the term business law, business attorney, there's a lot of different areas and subcategories of it. I can tell you as far as what I practice in, a few main categories. One would be trademark. So I can help people. So if you have a business name that you want to protect from other, when I say protect, I mean stop other people from using a name or logo or slogan that is confusingly similar or the same as your company's name or slogan or logo, for instance. I also practice patent law, which is an area where if you have an invention, you can protect the rights to that invention. Also practice copyright law, which might apply here to something like a podcast or book, music, movies or videos. You want to protect those rights against people just simply copying your work and not paying you for it. Other areas, I can help people form new corporations, new LLCs, and that kind of thing. And then I can advise about things like business contracts, issues with partners, and some other miscellaneous business areas that come up from time to time.
Sure. Yes, sir. And I know I've heard like a few horror stories about people not having their business names and ideas properly trademarked and patent, and someone can just like come right in and take your idea and it be perfectly legal because you didn't have the proper business structure, business documents in line to protect yourself and your company.
Yeah, that can happen. And one of the things that I should address it's just part of why it's good to see someone like myself is just to get straight exactly which of these areas you need some help in, because it's unless you have some background in a related area, you may have no idea. You might not even think about an issue like, for instance, a trademark. Some people just go ahead now and start a business and don't even think about these things. And then later you end up potentially in a fight where you could have had the upper hand in the fight with someone if you've done everything right from the beginning, but instead you're kind of playing catch up if you don't. So, I'll give you a couple examples where this could come in. It's like, well, people do know that if you have some level of trademark protection, Wesley, just by using a name, for instance, in commerce, okay? The problem is that protection is not nearly as strong as you would have if you were to get the trademark registered, right? Which compared to very big legal fees like lawsuits and that kind of thing isn't all that expensive, although there's some money involved, of course. For instance, if you have the trademark registered, you are presumed to have national use as of the date that you get it registered, or the date that you make the claim of first use in the registration. Whereas if you end up in a fight with someone and you didn't get the registration, you're going to have to prove all of that in court, and it might be difficult to do that. There are also far more defenses that an infringer might have if all you have is a so-called common law trademark compared to having a federally registered trademark. So you're just in a much better position. And plus, if you ever go to sell your business, that's going to be an asset that a buyer is going to want to see, that nice federal registration. Hey, we own this, this, and this mark. So, that's one example. I mean, I'll give you another example in the area of copyright. A lot of people that are creatives, they understand that you can get copyright just by claiming the copyright in the material. But again, there are advantages to getting the copyright registration completed prior to somebody infringing. So, and I think the biggest one is that if you register it prior to anyone infringing, then you will be able to sue that person for damages and recover your attorney's fees and costs automatically in lawsuit, which is not the case generally. And those can be very, very high for litigation. So again, it's just good to get this stuff structured ahead of time. As to corporations and LLCs, the biggest advantage there is protection of your own personal assets, right? So by operating a business through a corporation, corporate entity of some kind, you are not responsible in nearly all cases for the debts or judgments or lawsuits against that business. So if things go horribly wrong, maybe your business would fail, but at least your personal assets should not be at risk in that circumstance. But if you just operate as a solo practitioner, then you are personally responsible for, let's say there's a product liability case or a slip and fall accident, or there's an employee lawsuit against you, or some contractual lawsuit, or just a lot of debt that doesn't get paid. You are personally responsible as the owner of the business of an unincorporated business for that. So I think listeners should think about that as a good starting point.
Yes, sir. And I think you made some great points, especially the part about, when you do go to sell your business, or if you're thinking about selling your business, buyers want to know that you own, your name, you own your logo, you own these marks. So I think that's a very interesting topic to point out, or interesting piece to point out.
So.
Yes, sir. So moving right along, when I first called down to your office to ask you a few questions, I know that I can't remember the name of your assistant, but you had a really nice front desk phone operator to answer and kind of schedule an appointment for me. So that kind of leads right into my next question. For you, what's the importance of having a good team? And what's the importance of building a good team, and how do you screen for those good team members?
Yeah, so it's a huge part of business, right? I mean, I think a lot of times business people think about their business initially as, here's the business model or the technology or the new idea or, whatever have you. But what mostly makes business people successful is execution. And a big part of execution is having the right people in place. So, one of the things I do, and this is something that's, just from sharing my experience as a business person, not so much legal advice here. Mm-hmm. But I think some listeners would be interested in this. My practice since the beginning of last year. So when we had my bio, it's correct that the Goodman Law Center started in 2007, 2008, around that time period. But in 2015, I became a partner at a law firm. Okay. And then Kalicki Collier Law Firm here in Reno, and then I broke up with that partnership in 2019. And my new business model, which is a business model that I don't know if it would work for all of your listeners' businesses, but it's something that could be considered. I run what people have called a virtual business, right? So I've got a small office with very light overhead, but I hire services and programs that are professionals to handle things that would often be dealt with by employees, for instance. So an example is the reception. So instead of having a full-time receptionist, I actually have a reception service. The phones are forwarded to the reception service. They're able to schedule me via Google Calendar, right? And they send me emails and notes about the cases. They can transfer calls to me if necessary, if I'm available. And one of the things that I think is really cool about this is for a cost that is much lower than hiring an employee, I am able to have my phones answered pretty darn close to 100% of the time during business hours, 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, which is something that you can't say about a lot of other lawyers and law firms, even much bigger law firms than mine. Sometimes you call and you get through to voicemail, and it's frustrating for people. So I think those services are valuable. I do that in some other areas. There are certain types of pieces of the work that I do that is, let's say, long and tedious, and I can outsource it to independent contractors that can help me take care of it. And of course, I review and revise the work. It's on me. I'm signing the documents, but at the same time, it allows me to be more efficient with my operations and provide a higher level of client service because I don't have to spend all day on some pieces of the work involved. And I think nowadays, especially, it's ironic because we're all going through a lot of changes now with the COVID-19 pandemic, and I guess I feel sort of blessed in a way because my business model that I started in 2019 is largely based on systems that now a lot of people are forced to try to do. I just did them because I thought they were more efficient and more effective for my business.
So it's like you were already ahead of the curve.
I guess so, although it's not like I really wanted a pandemic to hit. Nobody wants that. I mean, it's horrible. I wish this thing would just go away, of course. I hope at some point we'll get, a cure or a vaccine or something and get this off of our plate. But I guess just the way it worked out, yes, I was kind of ahead of the curve in that regard. I mean, other things that I do, for instance, faxing, right? I can, if you fax me something, that is converted to a PDF. I can download that. I can digitally sign it and then go ahead and digitally fax it back to you or somebody else, right? And I never have to print a piece of paper. So I think that's cool. Most signatures now can be done digitally, and I'm set up to do that. And I know some people are might be more comfortable with the hand signature because it's more traditional, but I've thought about this, and I actually think that the digital signatures are in some ways more secure than a traditional hand signature, because if you think about this, you could write up a phony baloney contract if you were a nefarious person, let's say, which neither of us are, but let's just pretend, right? And you could scribble a signature on it, and nobody would know the difference until you actually got to court and had some handwriting expert say, "Oh, that's not this person's signature," right? Whereas at least with the digital signature program, the person would have to have access to the signer's email or mobile phone in order to forge something, which is much less likely because most people carry their own phones all the time, and they usually don't give away their email passwords to non-trusted people or anyone, hopefully. So, I think that's a positive benefit. And, my practice management software is cloud-based. And so wherever I am, I've got a mobile app. So if I need to put in some billing, let's say, for a client, I can do that on my mobile phone as I'm moving around, that kind of thing. And my reception service can transfer calls to my cell phone even if I'm not in the office too. So, I can be available even if run around with kids or something if I have to.
So it seems like you're in perfect position to you have your business station for the future pretty much.
Yeah, I'm happy with the way with the way I'm operating, and I think that it's it's a sleek kind of modern approach to business, and not every business is compatible with this. If you have a business that involves maybe manufacturing products, and maybe you need a warehouse, or you need a factory, something, you're going to have employees and that kind of thing going on. But for a lot of service businesses and things, or this would work. I even think in manufacturing, if you are able, some businesses I know outsource the manufacturing, and they're just really selling the product, marketing it, and they're able to just drop ship products from that are made to their specifications by somebody else. I don't have direct experience with this. I've just heard people operating in these ways. And so I think that it's at least worth consideration, because one of the things that your listeners that are interested in starting their own businesses will find is that, when you start your own business, everybody is initially really, really excited. And this is an experience I had as well, because they're going to be their own boss. I'm not going to work for the man anymore, right? And you're going to get out there, and you're going to do what you want to do, and you'll have your own schedule, and you're very excited about it. But then the reality starts to head in sometimes that, man, this is a lot of work, and it's very expensive, right?
Right.
Because when I initially started, I was having a great time my first year and a half. And then when I got in the next few years, I had employees, and I had a bigger office, and all of that traditional stuff, right? And I looked back and I thought, geez, my gross income kept going up, but my net income really wasn't that much better or even better at all than my first year, when I was kind of running lean just with me. And that gave me the idea years later to maybe go back to, it's almost like I'm going back to my first year, except that, since I have all this experience, both as a practitioner and in the business side, I know exactly what I'm doing. And so I can be much better than I was then, but still operate with that really light base overhead. And it's a way I like to operate, and I think that a lot of people should consider it.
Yes, sir. Anytime you have small overhead and high income, that's always a positive, right?
Yes. And I think that it's just the thing I'm driving home too is just how those overhead expenses just add up and are harder than you think to keep up with sometimes. And
right.
So if you can structure them, and what I've thought about in this regard is that running a virtual type office allows you to have what I'd consider a quantum leap of lower expenses, right? I'm not that big into just, trying to shave off, $10 a month from a vendor. I mean, it's okay to do that, but ultimately I think that at least 90% of my energy should go towards just driving additional income, and about 10% to maybe managing expenses, on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
And the reason why I say that is because if you think about it, as a business, let's say your business generates, I don't know, pick a number, $300,000 or something, let's say, right? Even if your expenses were zero, your maximum income would be $300,000.
Correct.
Or, $100,000, whatever that gross is. Whereas there's no theoretical upper limit to what your revenue can be. So I still do think you want to invest more of your resources into driving revenue. But the reason why I like the virtual model is because that's by operating virtually, you decrease expenses in such a dramatic fashion that it just frees up your kind of energy to really drive yourself to the next level. And it also just guarantees that even if you struggle a little bit, you'll still come away with some decent profit.
Yes, sir. And so while you're on that topic right there, let me just ask you this quick question. So you participated in business from both sides, from the attorney side, and you actually participated in it. So what are some business mistakes that you made early on, or that you've seen other people make that you wish you could have avoided?
Yeah. There's so many, right? I can talk all day about this, Wesley, but that's the thing. The first one I've already talked about, which is just you get too committed to too many ongoing costs too early. That's
Okay.
one. And that's kind of one of the ones that I experienced. And now you can't be afraid to take on costs, right? I mean, there are times when it's totally worth it, but especially make sure that you're going to have to bootstrap up your cash flow first before you get too deep in some of these things. And especially with regard to things like employees, right? Because all of these other costs are kind of chump change compared to having an employee, because an employee means that you're paying for this other person's entire lifestyle, right? Which I've done. At one point I had 3 employees, and I know that's not a huge business, but still, that means those 3 individuals are completely relying on me for their paychecks. And, that kind of weighs on you. And it's not always easy to make it. I always did make it, but, it just creates a higher level of anxiety sometimes. Now, I would say that some other things, I think that some of these are maybe more unique to being an attorney, but you do have to make sure in whatever business area you do, make sure to get paid. And earlier in my career, one of the things that I'm doing differently in my new, what I'm calling Goodman Law Center 2.0, right? Since I broke from the law firm, is, I'm trying to make sure that I'm avoiding a lot of these cases that have to be on hourly fee agreements, like lawsuits and that kind of thing, because the problem is that, what you have to do is take an upfront retainer, and then you're billing by the hour. I don't know if you've ever been through a lawsuit and experienced this, or if you've been through a divorce, it's the same thing, right? It's hours. And the problem is that sometimes the case gets way more involved than anybody ever thought. And your client doesn't keep up with the bills. And then you have that uncomfortable conversation of, hey, I know you paid me $5,000 and you scraped up another 2, but the bill's at 12 and we got trial coming up. And, boy, that puts everybody in a unhappy situation. And look, I don't know what I did. Instead of trying to find some direct solution to that problem, Wesley, what I did is try to avoid the whole situation from the beginning. In other words, that's part of why I'm focusing on areas like patent, trademark, copyright, LLCs, contracts. These are all things that I can just ask for a specific flat fee up front. And if you want to pay it, great. If you don't, that's great. But at least I haven't done the work first, and I'm then asking you for more money, which you might not have, right? That almost every lawyer that practices in those areas runs into those issues. And I imagine that also happens for a lot of other business owners in service areas, consultants or what have you, where things, contractors, right, where it has to be by the hour because you can't really predict what it is. It's just a nice space to live in where you can just simply sell products or sell services for a certain amount, and then you can just be focused on more sales and better delivery and so forth.
Yes, sir. So it sounds like you found a fee schedule that works for you.
Yeah, and I'm still tweaking it, of course, but at least, and I do have that. That's another thing I've done recently too, is I've created a full fee schedule. I don't publish it online, because I don't want people to just get too focused on that initially. But if you contact my office either by phone or email, or set up a consultation with me, then I freely give that out, of course.
Of course.
At that point.
Yes, sir. So, what are some of your favorite things about, working for yourself and being your own entrepreneur?
Oh, yeah, there are. And despite all the groaning I may have had, I think it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life to do this. In fact, when people will ask me if I'm glad I became a lawyer, my answer is yes, since I've been able to build a business working for myself that I enjoy. If your question was, did you like being a lawyer working for other firms or people or organizations? Not really.
Right.
It wasn't great. So some of the things I like, number one thing is I do control my schedule. There's a lot of work all the time, and there's things that have to be done. But, if my daughter has a dance recital, I'm there, right? And my son's got a soccer game, I'm there, right? Or if my wife says we need to spend some time together, I'm there. right? If I need to get to the gym and get a workout in, I can go do that. And that's huge. I mean, that's just something that, people work for companies, you got to get your permission, your paid time off or your unpaid time off or all these kinds of things. That's just not for me.
Right. Sure.
At all. So other things is that at least I've got control over my own income, like more control. I mean, obviously working as a job, I mean, here's your, larger organizations tend to have a salary structure for whatever field you are and number of years or what your talent is. And sometimes it's not all of that flexible. And so, there's an opportunity to really have a nice income. For a smaller law firm like mine, there isn't that realistic opportunity of becoming massively rich, but I can do pretty well.
Right. Yes, sir. And I know it's like you can't really put a price on being able to move around and do things how you want to and when you want to. And I think the importance of like having this conversation too is just to show people both sides that come with being an entrepreneur and like stepping out on your own. It's fears that come with it, it's anxieties that come with it, and then it's also like rewards and feelings of hard work and just being proud of yourself and proud of the hard work that you put into it.
Yeah. And one thing, some other things you feel, if you really work on being productive, you can actually, and this is not easy, but it's attainable, you can actually make more money potentially than an equivalent person in the work world on a shorter work week, right? And that's not always true. A lot of times entrepreneurs end up, working, way harder than everybody else. And, like I said, sometimes if the costs are high, their income isn't necessarily higher. But once you conquer some of these issues that I'm talking about, keeping your income up and your costs down and so forth, and having good productive habits, you can really have a nice kind of lifestyle situation as well. So, and that's something that I, at least so far, have been able to achieve on the Goodman Law Center 2.0 since last year. I had my highest income year with also my lowest amount of work hours. So
wow.
That's now, one of the things, and this brings me to another point that I recommend just as a business tip. One thing I do as an entrepreneur is I actually have a very brief little sheet. It's actually in my practice management software, but you could use a spreadsheet or just a Word doc or a notepad or whatever. And every day I just write down very briefly or log into this and put in how many hours I work. So if I work 7 hours, if I work 10 hours, 8, 3, doesn't matter what it is. I'm not itemizing what I do because that would take a lot of extra time that I don't want to spend. But I'm just keeping that, and then I can go back and evaluate. Here's how much money I made, and here's how many hours I worked. Because one of the things that happens with entrepreneurs, it's like they'll work, tirelessly on something, which is great, and then they'll look at their income, and it's like, well, I made, let's say you make $100,000, but if you work 100 hours a week all year without a vacation, $100,000 really isn't very good.
Right.
That's not much. That's about the same as just having any regular job. It probably works out to about $30 an hour or something like that, or 20. But if you can make $100,000 and let's say you work 30 hours a week and take a couple vacations, that's pretty awesome, right?
Then it's worth it.
So it's good to at least track it. That's one thing, and a lot of business coaches and things will tell you to track this and this and that. And I think it's all good, although I also acknowledge that, if you track too many things, it just becomes too much of a burden. So I don't know, but at least obviously you have to track your profit and loss and everything because of taxes. So you absolutely have to do that. And then the other thing that's important to track, I think, it's just how many total hours do you put into this? And so then you get an idea of not of your efficiency in terms of time. and it kind of focuses you, because I think you can get a lot done in a moderate amount of time if you have a really high level of focus.
So when you were just starting out, for the people out here who are just starting their business, like how many hours, how much time did you have to put into actually building it up and, creating a reputation for yourself? How much time would you say you worked, maybe a week or a day or something, just in the building process?
Yeah, here's the thing. I always I've never been one of these people that work that really crazy work weeks. Although certainly there would be periods where I'd be working very hard. I think it probably averaged to a typical like 40 hours a week during the early stages. But it was very hard, very focused work.
Right. For sure. And so now, being maybe 13, 14 years in the business, now how do you define success as like an entrepreneur and with your practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple things I'm thinking about. Are you talking about in terms of total money, or are you talking about in terms
of not necessarily money, but I mean, it's, however you feel, to measure, it doesn't have to necessarily be money, but some people do like to keep score through, how much money they can save or how much time they, can have off, how much time they don't have to be in the office. So like, how do you personally define success just working on your own, being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I want to, broadly though, I want to be able to reach my financial goals in a highly efficient manner. And then I also want to be able to enjoy what I'm doing, which is really cool. And I think at least over the last year, I'm not all the way there, but I'm much closer than I have been in the past to, achieving that. And again, the other major goal we already talked about is just having that personal freedom. And it's interesting because I've reflected on this, because there are, I think one of the things that people should reflect on when they're thinking about businesses or career choices generally is, everybody when you're little asks, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And you want to be a fireman or a police officer or a doctor, or these types of things. And that's obviously a very important choice we all have to make, right? What we're going to do for a career. But there are other, I think, equally important choices. Like, for instance, do you want to, work tirelessly to achieve a really big goal, or do you want to be able to just efficiently earn some money and enjoy your lifestyle? Right. And that's oftentimes there's some tension there. And I've felt that tension too, because I consider myself a high achiever type person, but then I also really want to enjoy family life and so forth. And the way I've tried to reconcile this in my mind, Wesley, is to sort of combine these elements and so for instance, I'll say, I want to be able to make X amount of money and I want my work hours to be X, and they're both the same goal, right? So in other words, it's not just, I want to make X money, whatever it takes. No, I want to make X money and I want my hours to be Y, right? And by doing that, I feel like I'm sort of, that itself it's almost like a higher goal, right? Given our example that we just alluded to, right? I'd want to be the person that made $100,000 on 30 hours a week rather than the person that made $100,000 on 100 hours a week, right? Because that's better, right? And so that kind of feeds both things, right? It gives me more freedom and lifestyle, but then it also kind of satisfies my need to try to achieve a very difficult challenge, which this is.
Right.
What I just described, it is very challenging because it requires a very high level of efficiency and smart business decisions to do that.
Yes, sir, for sure. And I think that's a big point to focus on too. And I think that could be a good end goal for anybody starting entrepreneurship, is to be able to make money on your own terms. Yeah. In the time frame that you want to make it in the amount that you want to make. So just being able to live life on your terms, I think that's the ultimate freedom that hopefully everybody is aiming for.
Yeah, and like I it's really, really great to be able to do it. And the thing is, though, you do have to avoid a lot of these traps. Like a lot of business owners end up, and I've been there for different years in my life where, the freedom becomes illusory because you have all these obligations when you're in business. But I think, that sometimes it feels like, oh, wouldn't it be easier to just clock in to a job and clock out, right? But what you really got to do if you really want it is to just keep focusing in on how you can structure your business to overcome that, and then you'll really have the freedom that we're talking about. It's not it doesn't just walk in just by starting a business.
And so when you say structure your business so it can sustain that getting over that first hump, do you mean something like keeping your overhead low? Just finding different smart, efficient ways to cut costs and run your business more efficiently. Is that what you mean when you say business structure?
That's part of it, certainly, and also efficient ways to increase sales and marketing and increase new business as well. Of course, you got to do that as well, right? And keep that spread where you want it to be. It also includes just different habits for being more productive with the time that you're working.
For sure.
So some of the things, one of my favorite, I'll plug a book. It's very famous by Tim Ferriss called The 4-Hour Work Week.
Yes, sir.
It's lower than the work week I've been able to do, right? And he goes through a lot of that, of different strategies for that. And I try to incorporate a lot of his strategies. One of the things that I think is really important is really try to not get bogged down on checking your email first thing in the morning, and don't be on your email 100% all day, because it's just such a distraction. You need to have some longer periods of time blocked out for deeper work, like figuring out what your next marketing plan is. Or in my case, if I've got something going on in a case, I need to figure out what's the game plan for this case, right? I can't be interrupted by the next email, the next incoming phone call, let's say. That's a trade-off there. Another, this is an old book, but it's another one I recommend. It's called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Brown. Harry Brown was a pretty well-known author back in the 70s, but I think that a lot of his stuff still applies today, even though it's all pre-digital. But I think some of the philosophies and concepts worked really well and inspired me a lot. So Harry Brown was actually a candidate for president of the United States with the Libertarian Party back in the day as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Really didn't have much to do with this piece of it, but just so people will recognize him, might. So.
Yes, sir. So it seems like you really take the time to study, history and see how other successful people are running their businesses, so you can kind of implement some of their practices and ideas and beliefs in with yours. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. What are some other things? One of the things I've started recently, Wesley, and this is kind of funny, I guess, but I've started a practice of doing meditation for 10 minutes in the morning before my business day.
Okay.
I never would have thought in a million years I would do something like that, because it's always associated with like these monks in robes in like Tibet or something like that, right. And it just seems like such a goofy, weird thing, but it actually really works. It gives your mind more calm, puts you at ease more, and gets you more focused. It's worth the 10 minutes. So
man, I've been doing some research about meditation, and I hear like once you really learn how to do it, it works wonders.
Yeah, my state, I've been doing about 3 months. So this is new for me, but I have noticed a bit of a difference. I use Sam Harris's app, the Waking Up course. You can buy it online, he actually even has a program where if you're financially struggling, you can email him and he says he'll give people it for free if they're struggling financially. So I like to do the guided meditation because I'm not some sort of meditation guru from, Nepal or anything like that. I just want to have somebody that's a professional to guide me through it 10 minutes and then in and out and then back into my stuff. And, like I said, I heard people recommending that for a while and I kept thinking, oh, come on. And then I finally said, oh, well, everybody seems to be doing this. I'm going to try it. And it's cool.
Man, that's so interesting. I'm going to have to check that out. And see,
check that out. So,
yes, sir. And so, how would you like for people to remember you and your company? Like, how would you like to be remembered?
One of the things that I think might be unique about me is I really like to make the process fun, right? It's interesting because it's a lot of my subjects are very dry and might come across as being boring. But I think that if you approach things in an interesting and fun way, that the stuff I do is very interesting and fun and can even be humorous sometimes. And it can be very, very interesting, especially, some of the patents, some of the inventions that I get to see, just really interesting, fun, weird, creative stuff coming through. So it's, and even just talking about, the way I like to present things, I like to keep things kind of lighthearted and take that kind of serious edge that you always have off the law. And of course, that doesn't mean that I'm not serious about the work and getting things right? I'm very focused and serious about that. But I just think that we can also kind of laugh about it a little bit too. And I think that makes the process better.
Yeah, certainly. It also makes like what you're doing more enjoyable if you can see like the fun in it, if you can pick out the good things in it. So I think that's an important quality to have, to be able to find the lighter side in a serious situation, such as like business law and dealing with people's livelihood. I think it's great to be able to look at it, from a lighter side, which is kind of a segue into the next portion. So on the podcast, we like to play a question game because I know things can get a little tense talking about entrepreneurship and business.
Yeah.
So just would like to ask you a couple fun questions, if that's okay with
you.
Yes, sir. So,
yeah, let's go ahead.
Yes, sir. So the first question is, where's your favorite place to travel?
Oh my goodness, I've traveled a lot and I do a lot of traveling. You know what? I still have to say, of all the places, my family has a cottage in Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
And we go there almost every summer for a week, and it's right on the lake there. And it's just, our family gathers, and it's a big kind of family reunion typically. And that's usually my favorite. But, I will say some of the other highlights, it's always fun being in Europe. There's just such a buzz there. Almost any city in Europe is just fun to explore. I also really liked Argentina and Peru and Chile. I did a trip through South America years ago, which I thought was terrific.
Man, it sounds like you've been all over the place.
I have.
Yes, sir. All right. And look, so the next question is, what song explains your life the most?
Oh my goodness. Oh my God. What song explains my life?
Yeah, no, that's a tough one.
That is actually a tough one. I think I may have to circle back to that one. Here's the one thing I can say is that there is, and it's not quite answering the question, but there is a video somewhere that I've heard exists but never seen of me singing karaoke of the Piano Man by Billy Joel at a law conference in 2011. So
oh, man.
I think it's and Billy Joel's been my favorite musical artist, so to give you that. And then maybe if it comes to me, I'll think of something that's relevant to my life on a song.
So it sounds like you're the life of the party.
Well, I don't know about that. Now I've got a bunch of kids, so I hardly ever go to a party. But at least at some time in the past, maybe.
All
at
right.
least if you have no drinks.
Yeah, get a few drinks in you.
Yeah.
All right. And so the last question is, what's an amazing thing that you did that no one was around to see?
Oh, amazing thing that I did that no one was around to see. Let's see. Another pretty good one. I mean, one of the things actually is kind of this meditation practice that we talked about, because that's something I did, you can do completely on your own. No one else has to even know you're doing it, which is kind of cool, right? And it seems to benefited my life a lot. And in fact, I haven't even I've told people about it, but most people in my life don't even really know about this, at least as of yet. Let me think if I can think of another, another cool one that nobody was around to see.
I know I put you on the spot.
Yeah. How about just a little fun one? I have some of these as a dad now, right? I have some of these moments where I remember them as kind of these super dad moments that you have.
Okay.
And so, although technically someone was around to see it, but this person was 2 years old, so wouldn't remember, right? So when my son was 2, he's sitting on my lap, eating, and we're eating ice cream together, okay? And then he's eating the ice cream, and then how 2-year-olds are drop everything and slob everything, right? So the ice cream starts to drop off of his spoon. He's trying to eat it himself, right? And he's sitting on my lap, right? And I've got a spoon also. We're kind of sharing. So what is Super Dad able to do? I catch the glob of ice cream as it's falling down with my spoon and just eat it.
Oh man, that's legendary.
I mean, just imagine that, like catching a glob of ice cream out of the air completely, no spill, just right, and then eating.
Right.
So that's the biggest Super Dad move right there.
Oh man, that's legendary. I love that. I love that, man. But Mark, thank you so much for joining us today, man. And if you could let the listeners know how they can find you on the web, how they can get in contact with you, please.
Yeah, I mean, easiest thing, just search, Mark Goodman, attorney, Reno, Nevada, something like that. You'll find me. The website is www.goodmanlawnevada.com. The phone number is 775-473-4268. You could find me LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, as well, if you're into that side of it.
That's perfect, man. Thanks again, Mark, for stopping by and spending time with us. And I'll see you again soon.